Hello and welcome to Cactus Cacti. So these are the seeds that we sowed in one of the previous videos. So this is filmed 2 weeks later, and I can say that so far we've got 5 out of the 9 that have germinated, but it's still can be a bit early for the Strombo cacti and the disco cactus. So yep, that they can still potentially come up, but everything else has, apart from those 3, and the Astrophyte Kikos also so far haven't come up. So that makes it 4 out of the 9. And then in this other propagator, we've got the seedlings that we looked at in the previous video. They're still doing well in here. But today's video is what the next stage is from these propagators. I'll show you what were in these propagators beforehand and what the next stage is. Well, unfortunately, what's still alive from the next stage, because I'm still learning that stage and have been a little bit neglect with the current seedlings from here. So we'll have a look and see what survived and talk about what the stage is and what I've done wrong and what I've done better in another setup. So we'll go have a look at those seedlings now. So here is the seedlings in the next step up. First thing you'll notice is that they're in pots, not in tubs. So these were started in tubs, but for the next step, which is sort of bottom watering, they needed holes in the bottom, which so they had to be transplanted into the pots because there's no holes in the tubs. So they're in the propagator. They're in the propagator lid that's just being propped up by a base just to give a little opening at the bottom for air to give some air circulation. We'll just take that off and we'll have a look of what we've got, sort of what has or hasn't survived. So have a look at the tray itself. So you notice in the bottom there's sort of like a mat at the bottom. It's sort of meant to keep it moist, have some water in, but because this is in a location that I'm not around it as much, it has dried out a bit, and then I top it up with water, and so there's not really constant moisture. So I have lost some of the plants in the process, but it seems to be survival. There's a mix of species here, and they all age around 2.5 years, the same as some of the older seedlings that are still in the propagator in one of the previous videos. So they are growing a bit slowly, but they're healthy, they're growing. There are some issues with some of the growths, which we'll get to when we get to the specific species and have a closer look at them. One thing I will say now is that this propagator sits on the heat mat, so the same heat mat that the seedlings germination propagators are on. That same heat mat, because they come as a pair. And again, it's on a 12-hour cycle, but these guys are by a window, so they get natural light, which if you look at the Rebuteas here, is not quite enough. So they are a bit elongated. So I'll just move the tray back and we'll have a look at the Rebuteas first, because that seems to be what we're looking at. So these Rebutias are a cross between two of the Rebutias that I have in my collection. They just happen to flower at the same time. As you can see, they are a bit elongated. They're very thin and sort of stretching towards the light. So you can see that some of them, like at the base, the bottom ones, because I had quite a lot of them, I wanted to see what happens. So I chopped the tops off a few of them to see if they'll pop up. And you can see that the one in the centre there has got a little pup to the side of it. So we'll see what happens there. And then the top bit that I did chopped up, I stuck back in like the gravelly bit of the soil to see if they can root up. So that's this little one at the front here. It probably came off the one up the side. So they have rooted up, so that way I potentially get more plants from them, but they haven't always rooted back. And this little one here with another pup coming off the side of it, as you can see. Although it's not a pup coming off the side of it, it's sort of bent towards the light, is another bit that's rooted up. And yeah, and that's probably another bit that's rooted up. So they do root up relatively sort of like at this size. They kept some untouched, which is the more ones that are very elongated. So I guess the plan with these guys is to move them into better light. And now I've tested that even at this age, the top bit can still root up. So that might be something that I might consider in the future. But as you can see, that the top bits are getting slightly fatter, so even though they are stretching, they do get the best light in the propagator. So tempted just to leave them be at the minute and just let them fatten out on top, and then if they start leaning, that's when potentially I can chop them and root them. But I will cover that process when and if it comes to it, which it probably will. The next pot is something that I quite like, quite interesting to see how they develop. So these are Ferrobergia times Ferrocactus. So it has got a hybrid parent crossed with a regular Ferrocactus. I've got little examples of the parents here. There's not necessarily the same species of Ferrocactus, because that I don't know, because I bought these seeds online, but I thought I do have examples of what the parent is. So this here is a little example of a Luchenbergia principus, the agave cactus. So this is one of the parents of one of the grandparents of these little guys, that sort of gives them the extra like finger developments. And this is sort of similarly related to Ferrocactus here. So this is an example of a little Ferrocactus. Here, I can't say that it's a different, what the species of Ferrocactus were involved in the crosses and the parents. This one is a Peninsulae. I'm not good with names, so I'm going to see if I can focus so you can have a look on the label. That's an example of this one, but I can't say what the parents are. But then a cross between those two plants was crossed back with a Ferrocactus to produce the seeds here. But despite having mainly, I guess, Ferrocactus genes, you can see that the majority of these seedlings have got the fingers from the agave cactus. So it'd be really interesting to see actually how they develop. These ones have generally coped quite well with the way that I had the propagator set up, with less water and on and off water and constant moisture at times. But I unfortunately did let it dry out a few times, and then dumped them with a load of water, which probably caused a shock. That's probably why I lost some of the other ones. But we'll focus on the ones that have coped well first, and then we'll go to the ones that haven't done as well. So here we've got a type of Contria Chilintilla. So I do have an adult version of this plant and a juvenile version of this plant, but I don't have them on to show you right now. So these are little like columnar cacti, the ones with like the white hair between the spines. As you can see, there's a mix of different sizes, but they're all healthy and they're all growing, and yeah, they're 2.5 years old and they probably should be a lot bigger right now, and potentially looking like juveniles and more like the adult plant, but they're alive, they're growing, and that's all I care about, because I grow my seedlings hard, and the fact that these ones have not had constant moisture once coming out, the propagator probably has slowed down their growth rate a bit, and I don't particularly want to fertilise them, because that could cause them to grow fast and like can cause them to elongate like the Rebutia here have. So that's something I'm looking into, of ways of fertilising them at this stage, but like lowering the fertiliser amount than what's recommended, because I watched someone who said that that's what he does. So I can give that a try and see if that speeds up my growth rate, but they're healthy, they're alive. Here we got some Echinopsis aurora tortuosa. So these seedlings I got from the British Cactus and Circling Society seed list. These ones were in a group of that were unsold. So seedlings there was still some unsold when they got a next set up, or the next two sets up, when they were updating the list. So they just put like combination of the mixed packet seeds and pretty much what's left, and they sell them off fairly cheaply. So this is what came up that I got out of that batch, and this is what's come up. There was another type of Echinopsis in here, but they didn't particularly like the change in conditions, and even though I tried to even take these guys out the propagator a bit and do watering so they're not that, these ones didn't cope. But these ones have seemed to be the strong survivors. Again, a little bit small for their age, but they're alive and they're growing. They are a bit thin at the base, but I think that's sort of what happens with Echinopsis seedlings. But that can potentially be covered with grit in the future. Now we're getting the ones that are had a bit more of a difficult time. So this is Manumlaria apolloensis, subspecies saltsiensis. Again, sorry if the pronunciation isn't correct, but you can see again there's a range and mix of different sizes here. There's a bit of algae or moss growing on the surface, but I guess first thing you notice is that some of the tips are damaged. I don't know if this was because of light and stuff in the propagators beforehand, or just how they've just developed with the light here. So you can see that the one in the centre's pretty much smooth on top, and got a little pup coming out the top. Same with the one at the back here, right by the label. And we've got a range of mix of different like spines and shapes on top, and wool. So maybe there was something else mixed in, because these seeds are collected from a nursery in an open greenhouse. with the owner's permission. So yeah, so there may have been some mixed genetics in as well. Might be explained why some of them look a bit different on top maybe, or that's just how these ones are. Be interesting to see what happens. Again, they're alive and they're growing. It's a bit of browning on the base of some of them, and I guess some of them might be a little bit stretched, and I really don't know why. Others have just gone completely smoothed, but I guess that might be something to do with the genetics. But it'd be interesting to see what happens and what these develop into. Now we come into a bit more of a problematic spot. As you can see, there's only 2 individuals in here. There were other species that I put in on the other side. I think one of them was a Cactus, but that didn't like sort of this environment, and yeah, and mixing them up. Mixing species is probably not the best idea, but I wanted space. I needed the space to try and combine them together. So these are area size Combarblensis. Again, sorry about these guys seem to have been growing strong. You can see the one at the back. Here, bring it in closer. It's also grown in 2 parts. So you've got stop-start growth. It means that the plant sort of stops growing and restarts it, and it creates this sort of banding that you can sort of see. You can clearly see that here, where I sort of did stop growing when I sort of first took it out of the propagator, and it started growing again. Again, a bit elongated. And this stop-start growth is quite low down, so potentially could be hidden in the future. But it's alive, it's growing, but it is very, very small for its age. Like I said, these are 2.5 years old. Same with here. You can see the bottom bit here still seems to be more of what the seedling was like when it came out and germinated first, and then it's got the more like development of the adult plant on top. But these things do happen, and deaths do occur, unfortunately. Now, in this pot, you can see that I've got 3 different labels: 2 Cacti and 1 Cactus. Well, there's 2 Cacti, there were more. But these guys are the survivors and survival of the fittest. And these guys have sort of been the ones that have survived. And then we've got 1 Cactus bicolor Paras and 1 Cactus Lloydii, which is very, very thin, and sort of one that's recently passed away. But as you can see, the Cactus bicolor seems to have got good shape. Spines coming up. The Melocacti, the 2 that have survived, again, good shape. And got the first set of spines. This little Lloydii is probably not going to survive, but that's life. Things don't survive. Again, they're still pretty small for their age. But they're alive, they're growing, and that's all I care about. So looking back in the tray as a whole, some of them are doing well, some of them aren't, but they're alive and they're growing, and they've got potential in the future. With the mat at the bottom, I do try to keep it moist. Sometimes I do dump water in with these guys, especially to about a quarter of the way up, and let them soak in, which is probably why some of them have just had that shock of the water going in, and they rotted away. But survival of the fittest, and these guys seem to be coping with it well. I also take the propagator lid off sometimes for like a whole day to just give them some air as well. I guess this probably also helps with them actually drying out. It's probably not always the best, but we'll have a look at I got this system, the same similar system set up somewhere else. We'll have a look at those plants and sort of what I've done better with them over these guys. But I guess it is also down to the species that are there, that you have, and a bit of testing. Testings like I did with the echinopsis, I did take them out and sort of have them on the side, still on the heat mat, but sort of watered them from the top because they just binged the water straight away. And you have to be careful more about the pot sizes, which is why, like on these back ones here, I combined species because I wanted the bigger pots rather than having them in little pots because they just absorb more water that way and stuff. So there we have it. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe and